Chinese president has talked about promoting multilateralism. So do you think this multilateralism approach is workable, keeping in view strong resistance from the West, because West would not like to lose its grip on world affairs?
The international order established in 1945 was never meant to be a unipolar world. It was meant to be multipolar world, reflected. So I think SEO made the right decision. They are promoting multilateralism as well as multipolarity.
India have been promoting this transnational terrorism, not only in Pakistan, but in the rest of the world. The Canadian example is also in front of you. The failed plot against a Sikh leader in the United States is also there.
All of us condemn terrorism of all kinds or shapes and forms. But whenever there is a terrorist attack happening, especially resulting in loss of life and damage of properties, for example, we need to exhaust all investigation to really find out the real culprit, rather than
Exactly.
jumping the gun and accusing another country for being responsible for the terrorist attack.
What are the opportunities and challenges in CPAC's second phase?
China and Pakistan should really appreciate the fact that both countries are fully invested in putting this CPAC project into operation. For terrorist attacks, which normally will result in very painful loss of life, SCO should be the major framework, a major process to help member states to solve these problems.
Keeping in view these all things, we have also seen China is coming closer to India. So is India still trustworthy? Keeping in view its past record, India could be trusted by China.
For many years, the United States probably gave the wrong impression to India that they love India, they respect India. But what President Trump revealed fully is that he doesn't really care about India. He called the India economy the dead economy.
Hello and welcome to Program Insight in B News English. Dear viewers, a lot of important developments are taking place in China. China hosted successfully 2 days Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin. It adopted a strong declaration, and that declaration called for a number of important things and issues that have been mentioned in Tianjin Declaration of SU that we will also discuss. It declaration also strongly condemned Jaffa Express terrorist incident that took place early this year in Pakistan. It also condemned Huzdar terrorist incident that again took place in Pakistani province of Balochistan. In addition to this, the declaration also talked about situation in Gaza, then conflict, then it talked about promoting multilateralism. Later on in Beijing, different leaders attending SU summit held bilateral meetings. As far as Pakistan-China ties are concerned, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif held meeting with Chinese President Xi and also held meeting with Russian President Putin. In today's conversation, we will discuss that the Chinese President, Mr. Xi, he talked about promoting multilateralism. The Russian President, Mr. Putin, talked about doing business and trade in local currencies. So keeping in view these all things, the question and the point which arises, will SCO survive, keeping in view strong Western pressures? To discuss this, we are fortunate to have with us a very renowned Chinese expert, Chinese professor of international relations, Professor Victor. Professor Victor Bao is from China, currently in Beijing. And very warm welcome to Program Insight in B News English.
Thank you very much for having me.
Professor Victor Gao. Professor Victor Gao, these all developments that took place in Beijing and then recently also in Tianjin. The question is, Chinese president has talked about promoting multilateralism. So, do you think this multilateralism approach is workable, keeping in view strong resistance from the West because West would not like to lose its grip on world affairs?
First of all, we are about to celebrate the 80th year anniversary of the Chinese people's resistance against Japanese aggression, as well as mankind's war against Japanese fascism. Now, the international world order we are living in through was established back in 1945 after defeating Nazi Germany in Europe and Japanese fascism in the Asia Pacific region. Now, the international order established in 1945 was never meant to be a unipolar world. It was meant to be multipolar world, reflected in the five permanent member states of the United Nations Security Council, each one with a veto power. Therefore, while there is one country which believes that it is the sole polarity in the world of today, that's wrong. That's against the original intent of the founding fathers of the international world order established in 1945. Therefore, I think the Tianjin communique adopted by the SCO summit clearly declares that they want to embrace multilateralism and they want to pursue this multipolarity in the world order. Now, what will be the alternative if, for example, multilateralism doesn't work, multipolarity doesn't work? That probably will leave with one sole polarity, and one country will dictate the terms to the rest of mankind. Normally, it will hold a gun at your head. I don't think
Mhm.
that will be a good world. That probably will be the law of the jungle rather than rule of law. And that unipolarity probably will do huge damage and harm to free trade. So I think SEO made the right decision. They are promoting multilateralism as well as multipolarity. Now, whether some Western countries like it or not, that's another issue. I think the grand megatrend of the world will continue to roll on, regardless of whether one country or several developed countries like it or not.
So, Professor Victor Gao, the Indian factor is recently we have seen on 10th of May this year the conflict between Pakistan and India when, without any provocation, India attacked Pakistan. When SCO talks of this multilateral approach, when Pakistani leaders call for holding dialogue to resolve conflicts, Indian attitude has been quite negative towards peace, security, and development. And when we talk of the terrorism, which is a common enemy, we found that India has been promoting this transnational terrorism, not only in Pakistan, but in the rest of the world. The Canadian example is also in front of you. The failed plot against a Sikh leader in the United States is also there. So keeping in view a new realignment and cooperation, how India could be adjusted, keeping in view its negative track record.
It is encouraging to see that the joint communique actually covers some incidences of terrorism in certain parts of our territories within the SCO framework. Now, I think if I have a piece of advice for the Indian government, I would say all of us condemn terrorism of all kinds or shapes and forms. But whenever there is a terrorist attack happening, especially resulting in loss of life and damage of properties, for example, we need to exhaust all investigation to really find out the real culprit rather than
Exactly.
jumping the gun and accusing another country for being responsible for the terrorist attack. Now, let me use one example. We all know that mankind condemned terrorist attacks on 911. And I think the majority of the people involved in that attack happen to be Saudi citizens in Iraq. But you cannot accuse the government of Saudi Arabia for instigating that terrorist attack on 911, even though a large majority of the people involved in that attack actually hold Saudi passports. So I
Exactly.
hope the I hope the Indian government will at least have that simplicity and elegance in their logical thinking, rather than, for example, oh, there is a terrorist attack, therefore the government of certain country must have instigated that. That probably is not the right approach. So I also hope that the SCO framework probably will be developed into the best framework to deal with any kinds of terrorism. Whenever there is a terrorist attack happening in one of the member states, we need to spring into action to help the victims, for example, to seek justice and to bring the culprits to justice. Is that right? But that should not be involving, for example, jumping the gun and accusing your neighboring country as the culprit for the terrorist attack, for example. And then we also need to be fully aware that you do not want to weaponize terrorism because there are tendencies that certain government wants to be involved in such activities and they don't call it terrorism. They call it, for example, independent movement or achieving independence or autonomy by certain subsections of one country, for example. So I hope SCO can really operate very effectively in coming up with common denominators and the paradigm to deal with such terrorist attack going forward, rather than, for example, parallelizing the whole situation. If one country condemns the other country for being responsible for such terrorist attacks.
Professor Victor, how you see the meetings between Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif with President Xi and with the Russian President Putin at a time when Pakistan's relation with the United States of America are very strong and both countries are cooperating with each other. There is a strategic dimension of Pakistan-America relations, and you have already seen that number of countries were penalized, which were having trade with Russia, with China. So Pakistan's this realignment with Moscow and Beijing. So what is this signaling to the West, particularly to Washington?
Well, China, Pakistan continue to have this ironclad friendship and brotherhood and sisterhood. I don't think our friendship and commitment to help each other will be damaged by any ups and downs in international relations. And the Prime Minister of Pakistan has been warmly welcomed to this SCO summit. And in addition to attending the proceedings of the SCO, I noticed the Pakistani Prime Minister also went to Tianjin University and gave a very important speech. Now, this is very well reflected in China because lots of people read about the messages contained in the Prime Minister's speech. That is in addition to the SEO events. And the fact that President Xi Jinping and other leaders met on the one-on-one basis with the Pakistani Prime Minister also indicated that Pakistan is truly a very important country within the SCO framework. And the fact that the Tianjin communique eventually was adopted by the SCO summit means if there is any success of this SCO summit meeting, it is a success of all the participating countries. Of course, China was the host. China played a lot of important leading role in making sure that this SCO summit became a success. President Putin was important. Prime Minister Modi of India was very warmly welcomed by many participating countries, for example. But eventually, by the end of the day, the success is a collective success of all the participating member states. And I think in that overall context, the Prime Minister from Pakistan did play a lot of role and his contribution is widely acknowledged. Now, for the improvement of Pakistan with the United States, my personal view is that if U.S. Pakistani relations can be improved for the long term, that's very good. My concern is that the only reliability in the world of today is the unreliability of the Trump administration. And the only predictability in the world of today is the unpredictability of the United States. So while I'm happy to see Pakistan making improvement in its relations with the United States, for example, you need to be wary of any kinds of possible changes, unpredictable turns of the events, etc. And while it is absolutely in Pakistan's interest if you can improve relations with the United States for the longer term, be
China has
wary.
no
Be
objection.
wary
China
of sudden
has no
changes.
objection. So another important one when this meeting took place between Prime Minister of Pakistan and Chinese President Xi, CPAC was discussed. How you see the second phase of CPAC? What lessons Pakistan could learn? Of course, from CPAC one now focuses on CPAC two. So, what are the opportunities and challenges in CPAC second phase?
Well, for the benefit of your audience in Pakistan, allow me to mention one thing. The whole CPEC project is the most important and the project within the whole BRI framework. And the
Mhm.
overall investment in the CPEC project surpasses any other projects within the BRI system. Now, what is the meaning of this? I think the meaning is that China and Pakistan should really appreciate the fact that both countries are fully invested in putting this CPEC project into operation, and the fact that many of the projects are long-term projects, for example, highways, railways, etc., which does not
Energy
generate
projects.
into immediate gains for the shorter term, doesn't mean that China and Pakistan should not really continue to support these longer term projects, which may generate ultimate gains for many centuries, if not 100 years or so. However, for the CPAP projects to really to be successful, you need several things. One is maximum protection of the nationals of the Chinese workers inside Pakistan, because each time whether there is a report of a loss of Chinese nationals' life in Pakistan, it's a very sad news for the whole Chinese nation. And many
Exactly.
families demand justice to be done, etc., and it causes delay for these projects. So I do hope the Pakistani government, the Pakistani military, as well as the Pakistani society at large, should really work together to make sure that the security for the Chinese workers, professionals, teachers, etc. in Pakistan, especially involving the CPAP projects, especially in Baluchistan, will be fully protected. Because otherwise, it really creates all the pains and the traumas in the Chinese psyche. Because no one here in China wants to see loss of any single life for the Chinese operating in Pakistan. Now, the other
So,
thing is that there has been talk about the so-called Baluchistan independence. I think all member states of SCO should unite in making sure that the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Pakistan, like that of any other member states of SCO, should be fully protected.
that's very, very important point that all SCO countries should ensure that sovereignty and security of Pakistan should be fully protected. A question quite connected to what you shared your perspective on counterterrorism. On 20th of August, we have seen Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi travel to Kabul, and there was a trilateral meeting Pakistan, China, and Afghanistan. So development cannot be pushed forward. Peace, development, connectivity, BRI, and in that meeting, it was agreed that this China-Pakistan economic corridor could be pushed forward to Afghanistan as well. Afghanistan remains one of the most volatile country. Still, there are many terrorist organizations based over there, including this Majid Brigade and BLA and Band GDP. These all organizations are carrying out terrorist attacks mostly in Balochistan and in KP province. So how important is a joint mechanism, a joint cooperation in fighting terrorism? If Balochistan is peaceful, China is peaceful, Pakistan is peaceful, the entire region is peaceful. Your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, the origin and the original purpose of the SCO when it was established about 24, 25 years ago was very much focused on anti-terrorism. Because
Security
when the
cooperation and
war launched
counterterrorism.
by the United States against Afghanistan started, there was a lot of concern that extremism, terrorism
Terrorism.
will spill over from Afghanistan to neighboring countries. And anti-terrorism should remain a major focus for the SCO operations for the years and decades to come. On the other hand, I would say the real method to weed out terrorism is to promote economic development. Because if a country does not grow, and if the people in that country suffer from poverty, for example, that becomes a breeding ground for terrorism of all kinds. So, from the Chinese perspective, we do not want to see terrorism of any kind inside China or in China's Xinjiang Autonomous Region. We do not want to see terrorism, especially terrorist attacks, taking away lives of the Chinese nationals in Pakistan or in Afghanistan. And that gives us more reason to really cooperate with each other to make sure that terrorism does not take place in the SCO member states. And God forbid, if they do take place, then there will be a process, there will be a structure which will spring into action to thoroughly do the investigation and to expose who are the terrorist activities behind them, who are the criminals involved, and then we collectively weed them out. So that should be a process. I hope this will be the focus area for the SCO in the years and decades to come.
So another thing is there was a call for dialogue to resolve conflicts, but we have seen that the conflict of Gaza is lingering on. There is everyday repression, aggression, and brutality is being committed by Israeli forces, although the exchange and SCO declaration strongly condemned this. Then we have seen there is also an unending conflict in Ukraine, and then in South Asia, Jammu and Kashmir, which is a flashpoint. So issues are still there despite United Nations Security Council resolution, despite calls for peace, negotiation, and resolution of conflicts from platforms like SCO. Why these issues are still unresolved and poses a greater threat to regional and global peace and security?
I think that SCO has many member states, and sometimes member states do not see eye to eye on major issues, especially between them or among two or three countries, for example. This is a reality. We do not need to pretend that they do not exist. And however, for the overall purpose of SCO as an organization, we need to create all the incentives so that all the member states will need to agree to bring all these sad, sometimes painful episodes to the attention of the SCO and try to find a solution within the SCO framework. It will be much better if we do this rather than, for example, accusing each other, threatening each other with war, with showdown, etc. That probably is very disconstructive for the SCO sustainability as well as for the fundamental interest of one or two or three member states. So I personally will recommend that for the SCO, we need to come up with standardization, paradigm, new structure, new process to deal with not only terrorism, but many other exigencies or emergency situations, especially when, for example, all of us are faced with this challenge of the AI revolution. And
Sure.
if we cannot get our acts together at home, in each of the member states, between member states, among member states, and if SEO is viewed by outsiders as an organization suffering from paralysis, from breakdown, for example, from war and confrontation among between our member states, that is not the bright future for the SEO. So, for territorial disputes, for example, I hope SEO will be a very good process to address them, helping member states to put away their differences. For terrorist attacks, which normally will result in very painful loss of life, SEO should be the major framework, a major process to help member states to solve these problems.
Professor Victor, from security and counterterrorism, which you mentioned, were the earlier primarily objectives of SCO. Now, main focus is on trade and economy, promoting economic ties, promoting trade. So, what do you think? What are the obstacles in promoting trade among SCO member countries? And is it possible that trade among SCO countries are all the regional countries could be done in local currency as suggested by Russian President Putin?
First of all, I think if we look at all the existing SEO member states, then one thing strikes out. That is, there are major energy producing countries as well as energy consuming countries and importing countries. That means if SEO really put a focus on energy security for the SEO as an organization for different member states exporting versus importing, for example, then we can really generate huge amount of benefits for SEO as well as for member states. Now, what does that mean? For example, China is one of the largest producer of energy, like oil, gas, etc. But China total demand for oil and gas is much larger than its domestic production, meaning China is a producing country as well as a major importing country. Where does China import its oil or gas from? For example, from Russia, from Saudi
From Iran?
Arabia, from Iran, for example, and from some African countries, etc. This is for sure. But just within the SEO framework, China engages with quite a few member states for joint production, for importing, for cooperation of many other kinds, for example. So I personally hope SEO will gradually, and the sooner the better, build up a focus on energy security. And if we can do a lot of intra SEO energy security cooperation, that probably will give all the reasons why we need to come up with a SEO systematic payment system, settlement system, or a new currency, for example. And I'm pretty sure now that agreement has been made that the SEO Development Bank will be instituted, that in itself will provide a platform where all these innovative financial experiments can be put into action. And all the SEO members eventually will benefit from such technological and innovation breakthroughs.
Professor Victor, the threats from US President Trump are already on record to all those countries who might do or might be doing trade in local currency. Now, strategic question is, what are the other options available other than United States of America? There is very large African market, untapped, Far East, Australia. There are so many other continents of the world. So, if there are trade tariffs by United States of America, and as you have mentioned also, there is a great, huge potential among SCO countries, Russia, China, India, Pakistan. Then North Korea president is also in Beijing. So that means 5 nuclear states. So this very strong economic bloc, don't you think it's an alternate to the American markets by promoting regional trade, by doing trade in local currency? That could be then an alternate.
I personally don't think so. I think SEO is not against the United States or against the West. Let me give you one example. Many years ago, when the International Space Station project was being introduced, China was very happy to apply to be a member, is that right? But the United States refused. The United States
Exactly.
even adopted a Wolf Act prohibiting NASA from working with China. That forced China to go solo. So China started to spend a lot of money on its own version of the and now the Chinese space station is much better than whatever that remains of the ISS. And whenever the ISS will eventually retire, then the Chinese space station will be the only one orbiting uh, in space. Is that right? That means China wants to cooperate with all the other countries, but sometimes the United States has second thoughts and they do not want to cooperate as ISS or China Space Station is an example. Now, for chips, no problem importing chips at the high end from the United States, from Japan, from Korea, from China's Taiwan province. But the United States wants to deny China access to advanced chips. That again forces China to go solo into independent research and R&D, for example. And I would say in a matter of 3 years maximum, China will be completely independent in production of chips of all kinds, lower end, medium end, and high end. So the United States will really suffer.
In the next 3 years, if I repeat that, China would be in a position to produce all types of chips, and the United States would suffer. One question again, very objective and balanced question on India. Whatever happened in last 3 months, and then in terms of India-United States relation, we have seen India lost credibility in the eyes of Americans as a India used to claim that it is a net security provider. It can work with United States against China. Then it used to bully and threaten Pakistan, but with the help of course, Chinese Security and Defense Cooperation PL-15 missile, JF Thunder 17, J-10C, and then both countries, China and Pakistan, are working on another latest fighter aircraft. So, keeping in view these all things, we have also seen China is coming closer to India. So, is India still trustworthy? Keeping in view its past record, India could be trusted by China.
First of all, I hope India will behave better in dealing with its neighboring countries, especially involving territorial disputes. And it applies to Pakistan, it applies to China, and between China and India, there is a huge territorial dispute. India insists that the McMahon line should be the border between China and India. And McMahon line has never been signed or agreed to by any Chinese government. So, from the Chinese perspective, McMahon line can never be the border between China and India. And China and India really need to bend backward to put the territorial disputes behind them. Otherwise, there will be no lasting trust. For many years, the United States probably gave the wrong impression to India that they love India, they respect India. But what President Trump revealed fully is that he doesn't really care about India. He called the Indian economy the dead economy, and he showed a complete contempt to India as a government, to India nation as a people. Now, this is not right for President Trump or for the United States to do. It actually pains people. That means President Trump doesn't really care about the fundamental interests of the people in India. He doesn't care about India as a government, and he really engages India only for the purpose of the United States rather than for mutual benefit. Now, if the United States can do this to India, why should you expect that they cannot do the same injustice to any other country?
Thank you so much, Professor Victor Gao, a very seasoned Chinese expert of international relations, regional relations, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, global affairs, and a very professor of eminence of international relations, was with us despite his very, very busy schedule in China. He participated in our program. and strategically highlighted some of the core and pressing issues regarding economic cooperation, security, counterterrorism, and of course the element of India and the takeaway that India will have to behave properly if we wish to get the dividends of peace and development. Dear viewers, till our next program, goodbye and Khuda Hafiz.